Thanks for the invite. I got to give this presentation in Kansas City at the Backcountry Horseman National Convention, and Dana said you got to come and do this, and I said I'd be more than happy to. So what I want to talk to you about today, there's a couple things going on, threats to our public lands. So just a quick raise of hands. How many of you ride on public lands of any sort? Okay. The next question would be is how many of you know if you ride on roadless lands or not? That's what I expected. Very few hands. You probably do and don't know it. And that's why this is such an important rule. Right now, I'm going to get ahead of myself. So I'm going to wait for a second. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what roadless is. If I can go to the next slide. So, roadless areas are not leftovers. They're not pieces of ground that just got passed over. They are the last places where Americans can still experience quiet and natural landscapes. About a fourth of our lands, about a fourth of our Forest Service lands are in roadless areas. And the threat that's out there is there is currently a proposal to do away with the roadless protection on those lands. I'll just talk to you a little bit about this picture too, because it's kind of a connection that I have with roadless. So there's a little lake. It's not that far from here, really. It's on the Idaho-Montana border. It's in a roadless area. It's up there. It's called French Lake. It's a great little red lake. I guess I skipped a little bit. When my first career, I was a Montana game warden, and I did that for 15 years. And then I went to a regional supervisor for another 16 years for all of western Montana. And then when I retired from that, Connie and I started an outfitting business in the Wild Marshall Wilderness, and we did the outfitting business for 13 years. But in between then, this isn't an area that we were outfitting in. This is an area that's west of Missoula on the Idaho line. French Lake is a little lake. It's about 30 miles west of Missoula. You go up to Fish Creek, and then you go west towards the state line. You park there. There's a nice parking area, and it's about an 8-mile ride up to this lake. And as we were riding up to this lake, I got ahead of myself again. So one of the things that I like to do when I told you I started out as a game warden and I went to regional supervisor. So basically what I did is I had a perfectly good saddle job and worked myself into a desk. So I was always looking for an excuse to get back out. So I would pack in my wildlife biologist and my fisheries biologist. And so I took my fisheries biologist up to this lake to sample it. And Connie went along, as she did a lot. She would take care of camp and cook for us and do all the stuff that we needed to do there. But on the way in on this trip, what made it kind of special is we were riding along. I was out front. I had 3 pack animals behind me. And Connie was there, and then we had 3 of the biologists were following along behind us on foot. And so we were going on. There's this great big huckleberry patch on a steep hill. And we were riding along, and typically I was about half asleep. And this black bear walks out about 10 feet in front of my horse. And the horse did nothing. The bear didn't even see us. He just turned, was walking up the trail. So we're going along. It's like, well, we're running behind. I need to get up there. We just kept going. So we're following this black bear. And the black bear is walking along. I'm about 15 feet behind it. We're just going along. He just came out of this huckleberry patch. He must have been on a sugar high, because he totally didn't know what was going on anymore. And anyway, so we're going up the trail. We get about probably 250 yards. He still hadn't noticed it. And I'm sitting there going, hey bear, hey bear. Of course, he's doing nothing. And so finally we get up there, and he finally stops. And he kind of lifts his head, and he turns around, and he looks at me, does a complete somersault, and takes off down the side of the hill. So this was in a roadless area that's not that far from here. And a lot of places, and we'll get to that in a minute, you don't really realize how many thousands of acres of roadless you have in this state. It's a phenomenal state. So next picture, please. So I'll talk a little bit about the roadless rule, and then we'll come back to some more fun things to talk about. So the Forest Service is in the process right now of preparing a draft EIS that they're going to release that's going to do away completely with the roadless rule, which means all the protections that have kept those areas natural since 2001 are going to go away. And if they go away, then it can be opened up to development, industrial development, all those different things on the things. If we like backcountry, yeah, go ahead and open my vodka, would you?
You sound a little parched.
I get a little nervous sometimes, sorry. It's good vodka. Okay. So, in 2001, the roadless rule was enacted. When they did that, they conducted 600 public meetings across the United States. 600 meetings. They're now proposing to do this with 0 public meetings. So and put it into place, they did 600. To take it out, they're doing 0. Makes you wonder why. So under the current rule, you can do a lot of different activities in there, firefighting activities, things like that. You can do those, but they are roadless. So next. So what the roadless rule actually does, like I said, it was adopted in 2001. It protects almost 60 million acres across the United States. 60 million acres. It limits new road construction and large-scale industrial development in these areas. We're backcountry horsemen. Backcountry is what we are. That's what we have. The important clarifications are, it does not create new wilderness. It does not close access. It does allow hunting, fishing, horse and stock use, hiking, backpacking, trail maintenance, fire management, recreation of all types, and grazing. So it allows all those things, but it's done in a natural environment. It's not roads. You can have trails, but you can't have developed roads. So what it does is the rule protects the land character. It doesn't restrict responsible use. Next. What happens if we repeal the rule? If we repeal it, we're going to suffer what's called habitat fragmentation. I told you I was fishing walleye guy from way back. One of the things that we like to see is connectivity. How many of you hunt or fish? Good. I would expect that. When you start fragmenting habitat, you create barriers to movements, barriers to calving areas, to wintering areas, things like that. It changes the landscape. The spread of invasive species, weeds. Once you put in roads, what happens? You start getting weeds, you start getting other problems that come in right along with it. When you put in a hard surface, it increases erosion. You get a rain, it doesn't sink in, it runs down the road, it goes off, and you start cutting into gullies and drainages. Statistically, roads increase fire risk. It does that because people making campfires and everything else create fire risk. So when you start sending lots of people in, the chances of fires increasing goes up. I mentioned this earlier, the backcountry character. We're backcountry horsemen. Backcountry is what we do and where we go. And so when we lose backcountry areas, or we lose the naturalness of those backcountry areas, we all suffer a loss. It raises the long-term management costs when you start putting roads in. Currently, the Forest Service has 380,000 miles of Forest Service roads in the country. 380,000. They have a $7 billion backlog in road maintenance. And they're talking about building more roads. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. Roads are expensive to build, and wild country is impossible to rebuild. Once you have it, once you lose it, it's gone. This is just a picture of an area, pretty typical Forest Service type country. The bottom one is a before, and the other one is after roads were put in. It changes the landscape, it changes the way it gets used. Some roads are fine. We all know trailheads are essential. Those types of things are good, but when you put tons of roads in, this is where it changes the character of the country, of the landscape. Okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit, like I said, I did this in Kansas City for the whole country. And we talked quite a bit about the eastern states. A lot of the eastern states were the same as what you did. When I asked you how many of you knew what roadless was, very few hands went up. Same in the eastern part of the country. They don't realize how much they have back there either. So the dark green, it's a little hard to tell on this map, but the dark green is Forest Service, and the light green is roadless. Almost around every one of those dark green areas is a light green area that is a roadless area. Granted, there's not much left in the eastern part of the country. Most of those roadless areas range from 5,000 to 100,000 acres. But we'll go to the next slide. But because they are rare and fragmented, it makes them even more important. There's not much left in the east. They have developed almost everything they've got. And that's what we need to worry about in the west. But anyway, that's what's going on in the east. There's some remnant pieces that are still in the east. They're absolutely jewels of lands that need to be protected and kept into the future. They need to keep this designation. Okay. I don't know how many of you have seen this picture before. This was taken from the space station as it went over the United States at night. But it kind of shows you the magnitude of the development in the east and how it's coming west and the hot spots in the west. But it really shows it. I'm going to always read this to you right quick. So in the eastern United States, roadless public lands are not vast. They are rare. They're hard-won and irreplaceable. These landscapes survive waves of clearing, logging, mining, and development that followed the era of manifest destiny. What remains today are the last quiet backcountry strongholds in a region where nearly every acre has felt the mark of human use. Okay?
Is that Tito's?
I think it is. Yeah. We need another one. I put this in again. I was talking to a lot of folks back east, but I'm just to you here in the west. I guess what I want to do is just say we need to think of this from a national perspective. This is an area anybody know that New Hampshire had a lot of forest? There's one hand back there. They've got the White Mountain National Forest. There's 800,000 acres, 148,000 acres of wilderness, and 368,000 acres of inventory roadless in New Hampshire and Maine. To me, that's incredible. That's a jewel they need to be taken. Okay. The eastern part of the country again. This was in Nashville, North Carolina. This was in their local paper. Federal rollback of roadless rule could imperil some of North Carolina's last wild lands, experts say. Okay. Now we get out to where we live. 95% of all the roadless lands are in the western part of the United States. Again, you can see there's dark green and there's light green. You look at Washington, Oregon, California, Montana, Idaho. We're kind of northern Wyoming. Colorado's got some. You get into Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, all that stuff. There's some there too. All critical lands. You get into Alaska. Actually, Alaska's got the most amount of roadless areas. But that's kind of the distribution across the western United States. And I apologize if I'm talking to you guys. Okay, next one. I needed to add this in too. Idaho and Colorado both had an opportunity to create their own state roadless rule a number of years ago. And they did that. And at the time, I didn't think this was a very good idea. Now I think it was a really good idea. So in Idaho, they set aside 9.3 million acres of roadless lands under their state rule. And in Colorado, they set aside, 4.2 million acres in Colorado. So they did their own state rule because they thought it was that important. Okay, next one. Okay, I'll let you look here. Those of you that are back here, you're having a hard time seeing. Anyway, let's just go to Washington. So Washington State has 2,015,000 acres of inventoried roadless. 2,015,000. That's a lot of ground. I left it up there for people to kind of find it. If there's other states you're interested in, Alaska is the number one, and this is not in numerical order. It just kind of the way it came out. But Alaska's got almost 15 million. Montana, we're 6.3 million. Anyway, that's those. I just wanted to let you look at that for a second in case there's some states that you're interested in. Okay, you go ahead and go to the next one.
This is the video.
Yeah.
It's not
Click
going
it.
to
If it's not going to play, that's fine.
the play button's not there.
Okay. See if, well, you can leave it there for a second.
It'll be on our website.
Okay. So anyway, this was a news story that we did in Montana, and basically says the debate over the roadless rule goes statewide. So because the Forest Service did not conduct meetings, we conducted 7 meetings of our own in Montana to try to get public opinion on whether they think roadless is important. We had a tremendous outpouring of comments on this, and clearly demonstrated that it's an important issue to people. One of the things that came out of this is it got to the end of the video and the reporter says, I reached out to the Forest Service for comment. And so she reached the local Forest Service office, and the Forest Service office says, you're going to have to contact USDA and DC. And so the local reporter gets a hold of DC, DC provides a comment back to them, and basically says, well, there may be an opportunity for comment down the road.
That local control.
But they did not allow the local Forest Service to make a comment to the local people. They had to come out of DC. Okay, now go to the next one. Okay, so this is following up on that. So in that NBC News segment, they reached out to the Forest Service. That was referred to the USDA and DC, and they responded. So one of the things that they said is the reason that they want to do this, get rid of the roadless rule, is they want more local controls. Yet they don't want the local Forest Service people to comment and be part of this conversation. There's a disconnect there. So I was also invited to the Idaho convention, and talking to Idaho, they had a Forest Service representative there. It was not the local forest supervisor, it wasn't the local forest ranger, it was a person out of the Ogden, Utah office is who they had. They didn't allow the local Forest Service to comment. At our Montana convention, the local forest supervisor, this was at our convention just 4 weeks ago. The local supervisor was, heck yeah, I'd be glad, I'd love to come and talk to you guys. All set up to go. 3 days before our convention, he says, I can't go. They told me I can't go. So I got on the phone, made some calls, and ultimately they allowed him to come and talk, but I think they gave him more local comments, more local driven, and yet it's not coming locally. So what does that mean? Well, this is kind of an important, how many of you work with the Forest Service or with BLM? Sweet, awesome, outstanding. Okay, so don't be offended currently if you try to get a hold of Forest Service and they seem distant or distracted or uncooperative. Don't take it personally, because for all practical purposes, they're under a gag order. They are trying to do their jobs, just like the Forest Soup that tried to come to our meeting. They want to be involved. They want to stay plugged in. But they're getting direction out of USDA that says, no, let us provide those comments. So don't get discouraged with your local Forest Service. Continue to reach out to your local Forest Service, your BLM district. Get to know your district ranger, your forest supervisor, your rec person. Get to know them and work with them and build a relationship with them before you have problems. They are good people. I'm sure there's exceptions out there, but there is with everything. But by and large, they are excellent, outstanding people. They're trying to do their job. We've been in a partnership with the Forest Service since 1973. That's kind of how Backcountry Horsemen got started, was trying to work with the Forest Service on how we want to manage our backcountry, how we want to keep stock use in the backcountry. We've been a partner with them since 1973. What happens in a partnership? If one of them's having trouble, you just let them go and kick them to the side, or do you stay with them and try to help them through it? I hope that you consider staying with them and trying to help them through this. Help us all through this, because this is our lands that we run. These are our public lands. We should have an influence on how they're managed, and so we need to stay involved. Okay, next one. Okay, so kind of leading in to what I'm going to talk about next. I want to put things in perspective a little bit, how quickly our country is changing. So 174 years ago was the peak of the westward movement. 174 years ago. That was 1852. At that time, the population of the United States was 24 million. Fast forward to 1960, it had grown to 179,321,000. Fast forward to today, we're now at 349,035,000. Our country, we're getting more and more and more and more demands for fewer and fewer and fewer public lands and our natural resources. So that just sets the stage a little bit for what I want to do next. So if you would go to the next one. I'm going to read this to you because I don't want to miss anything. It took me 3 days to write it, so I want to read it to you. Public lands are not disposable assets. They are irreplaceable. Sell them, fragment them, or open them to unchecked development, and they are lost forever. We must stand now to keep them public, wild, and accessible. Okay. It's easy to forget how short our memory really is. The great surge of Western expansion, driven by ideas like manifest destiny, reached its height only 174 years ago. That's barely more than a human lifetime or two. In that brief span, we've transformed vast, wild landscapes into farms, cities, roads, and industry. What remains of our public lands is not the excess, it's the remnant. These lands are the last living connection to what America once was, unbroken, self-sustaining, and free. Once they're fragmented or lost, they don't come back in any meaningful sense. You can't recreate natural landscapes with policy, and you can't rebuild the deep ecological systems that took thousands of years towards. Again, their whole point is this is supposed to be local control form. Protecting these remaining public lands isn't about locking something up. It's about recognizing that we've already taken almost everything else. In just 174 years, we've consumed the majority of what took millennia to evolve. What's left carries disproportionate value for wildlife, for clean water, and for cultural heritage, and for the kind of solitude and challenge that define the American experience. If we fail to protect these last places, we're not just losing land, we're closing the final chapter on a landscape that shaped the nation, and we're doing it in the blink of a historical eye. In short, we're not deciding what to do with abundant land, we're deciding whether the last of it will endure. So, that's it. My plea to you is to think about getting involved within the next 3 weeks. Probably within the next 3 weeks. It could be any day. But the draft EIS will be coming out from the Forest Service to repeal the roadless rule. The only chance that we have of stopping it is going to be you contacting your delegation, you saying something to newspapers, talking about it, generating some sort of support. My guess is there's a 99% chance that it's going to get repealed. And so what we're going to be stuck with is trying to put pieces back together someday, maybe, whatever those pieces are. So I haven't given up yet, but the chances are, I know it's an uphill battle, but the only way we're going to be successful in turning this thing around is to get some congressional support that would then come in on the Forest Service and USDA and said, no, this is a bad idea. This is our public lands. We want an opportunity to at least weigh in on them. in public forums, because written comments, they've already taken some written comments, and they probably, I hope, will open that up again. But that's the other thing, is if they do open it up to public comment, submit written public comments. It's the only chance we got. With that, I guess I'll just ask if you have any questions or anything. Yes, sir.
Why did the government put a gag on the Forest Service?
I can't answer that. The question was, is why did the USDA basically put a gag on the Forest Service? And I don't have the answer to that, except I think they just want to make sure that what gets said is in line with what they're thinking.
Where's that thinking coming from? What is that thinking? What's the question?
The question was, is where's that thinking coming from? Okay, so I'll not be politically correct. How's that?
Yes.
Yeah. If you look back at the last 30, 35 years, there has been a steady decline in Forest Service budgets, especially as it's related to trail maintenance and even just overall management of the Forest Service. The budget has been ratcheting down. They have gone to a drastic, in the last year, they've gone to a drastic cut in personnel. My opinion on this is they are trying to set up a scenario where they can go, see, they're not managing these lands, we might as well sell them and get rid of them, give them to somebody that can develop them and take care of them. That's what I think is happening. And the best way they can do it is by strangling the Forest Service and the BLM to the point that they really can't do their job. And so our role at this point in time is try to keep them functional enough to keep what we have and take care of it. That's my 2 cents. I don't know if it's right or wrong. That's fine. Nothing else. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.